The dream of reconstructing Shakespearean theatres has been realised through many projects around the world. These enterprises necessarily highlight the materiality of performance spaces, inviting close attention to how they are built and the specific places in which they are situated. Here, I want briefly to survey three case studies: Shakespeare's Globe in London, the Shakespeare North Playhouse in Prescot, Merseyside, and the Container Globe in Detroit, Michigan, to begin to explore how Shakespearean theatres can provide models for cultural, community-centred building practices that link place, history, labour praxis, and sustainable materiality. I contend that they do this in two main ways. Firstly, through labour conditions that partially return to a pre-industrial building culture, and secondly, through a conceptual tying of individuals to the communities in which they are situated. First, I want to outline the backgrounds to the theatres themselves. I'm sure most, if not all of you, will be familiar with the Shakespeare's Globe complex on London's South Bank. This was the eventual product of the Shakespeare Globe Trust and the International Globe Centre, which were founded by American-born actor Sam Wanamaker in 1970. These organisations had been created with the objective of rebuilding the early modern Globe close to its original location at Bankside, Southwark in London, using materials and construction techniques that replicated those of late 16th century England. The Globe Theatre, the outdoor auditorium, was fully open to the public in 1997. This was followed in 2014 by the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse, a reconstructed indoor space that aims to recreate the feel of the Blackfriars Theatre. The overall complex, in addition to these two theatres, also houses a lobby, gift shop, educational spaces, museum exhibitions, and a restaurant, the Swan. Playhouses and performance venues in early modern England were concentrated in London, but the small market town of Prescot, Merseyside, then in Lancashire in the north, was also home to a purpose-built indoor theatre until 1609. Following several decades and the interest of many different groups desiring to build a Shakespeare Centre for the north of England, the Shakespeare North Playhouse opened in 2022. This was a £38 million urban reconstruction project that contains the playhouse itself, an exhibition gallery, a performance studio, and the Secendod Performance Garden, as well as a bar and restaurant, a shop, and several community spaces. No architectural plans or drawings of the so-called Prescot Playhouse are known to have survived, so drawings for the new theatre were based on Whitehall's Cockpit Court Theatre of 1630 and other related drawings by Inigo Jones. The theatre, which seats 470 occupants, is galleried with two main levels, constructed of oak. Lastly, the Container Globe in Detroit, Michigan, opened in 2024, had been coming to fruition for almost a decade and which has won several design and community awards. This reimagined Globe Theatre, made from repurposed shipping containers, is situated in the Midtown neighbourhood, on the grounds of the former Herman Kiefer Hospital. Conceived by Angus Vale, former business manager of bands including In Excess and Kiss, the Container Globe aims to recreate the perceived intimacy and raucousness of early modern theatre-going at a site of low cost and mobile materials. Since the opening of Shakespeare's Globe, there has been a considerable amount of debate around the extent to which this and other similar spaces can be described as authentic. I'm not going to wade into that here, but I think that what can be said is that they often rely at least partially on models of construction that reflect earlier periods, as well as heighten interest in those models and their practitioners. Scholar of architecture Howard Davis, for instance, noted in his 1999 book, The Culture of Building, that the recently reconstructed Globe Theatre had both participated in and helped to drive a late 20th century revival of interest in thatching and traditional framing techniques in England. The role of the craftsmen and labourers who build theatre spaces are not commonly made visible to the public, nor are they often brought under the purview of theatre and performance studies. However, at Shakespeare's Globe, these kinds of figures are pivotal for maintaining meaning in the ongoing performance of the building, what Valerie Clayman Pye has described as the performance narrative of the architecture. Photographs on Shakespeare's Globe website show various kinds of labour being undertaken in the preliminary stages of the building process: the cutting down of trees to make timber for the project, the timber frame scaffold ready to be filled in, and workers in high visibility vests working to thatch and treat the roof. Similar concerns with craftsmanship are evidenced at the Shakespeare North Playhouse. During tours of the theatre in which I've participated, guides extensively highlight the reconstruction process and the historically informed materials and techniques used. The deployment of dowel rods rather than nails, for instance, to secure the timber frame together. The historical expertise of those involved in the project, such as Peter McCurdy, who consulted on the timber framing techniques, and who has also been involved in the Shakespeare's Globe project, is also underscored. Although construction of the container globe was obviously not undertaken using early modern materials and techniques in the same way, it is, however, marked by conscious sustainability and does in some ways replicate an early modern building culture which extensively reused existing materials. The first Globe Theatre of Shakespeare's time was built in part with recycled materials, making use of the timbers transported across the Thames from the dismantled structure of another playhouse, the theatre. The container globe is constructed from modified cargo shipping containers, with the theatre comprising more than 50 containers tied together with scaffolding, greenhouse roofing panels, industrial mesh, and corrugated metal wall fixtures. The structure is both modular and mobile, featuring a demountable base providing flexibility to the installation. The original impulses to construct Shakespearean theatres can be traced to arts and crafts movement of the 19th century that relied on a golden, reimagined Never Never land of England. And I'm wary of overly romanticising these spaces in the way that I think some of these images can. They are hardly free from environmentally damaging technologies. However, the recovery of labour praxis is not the only way in which these spaces, I argue, can contribute to a more sustainable building culture. They are also important community markers, inviting local inhabitants to participate more fully in their local networks in ways that I suggest can heighten attention to immediate material and environmental conditions. I want here to gesture towards the gathering work that they each perform, deploying the term from archaeologist Ian Hodder. Hodder has examined the gatherings that all things and objects do, beginning with the observation that, quote, things bring people and other things together. Consider a bridge, for instance, which gathers the two banks of a stream and the people that cross that bridge, as well as gathering carts into town or workers into the fields. I suggest that the value of the structures under consideration here lies largely in this gathering work they perform. Gatherings of people, of places, of materials, of timeframes, and of ideas. This speaks too to what education scholar Dwayne Trevor Donald has considered an ethical relationality, which he describes as a, quote, ecological understanding of human relationality that does not deny difference, but rather seeks to more deeply understand how our different histories and experiences position us in relation to each other, end quote. This sometimes necessitates a move away from Shakespeare himself. Gaynor LaRocca, an associate artist of the Shakespeare North Playhouse and artistic director of Prescot-based Imaginarium Theatre, has commented to local newspaper The Post that although the Shakespeare North Playhouse features his name, it's not all about Shakespeare. She further comments, what's magical is there's a real identity. They, meaning the town inhabitants, are Prescotians, that's a thing. The town is very precious to them and the sense of community. The theatre, she suggests, provides a space in which this sense of community can be fostered and engaged. Initial design documents for the container globe also itemised a variety of ways in which the building could be used beyond the staging of theatrical productions and the performing arts. This included food fairs as a Halloween haunted house, a sculpture garden, an art exhibition space, skating rink, food bank distribution location, and space for flea markets. A gathering of local community events which in many ways reflects the more varied uses of early modern London theatres as sites for an assortment of civic activities and participatory entertainments. Although it remains to be seen quite how many of these functions will be realised at the Container Globe, in the several months immediately following its opening in 2024, the venue played host to Youth Theatre and the Techtroid Electronic Music Festival, in addition to its two first full Shakespearean performances. For further and more detailed considerations of these ideas, I'm writing a book about reconstructed Shakespearean theatres for a trade publishers in the UK, which will hopefully see the light of day sometime in 2026 or early 2027. For anyone attending the International Shakespeare Congress in Verona next summer, I'll be on a panel with Angus from the Container Globe and Miles Gregory, creator of the New Zealand-based pop-up globe experiment. I look forward to any questions or comments that anyone might have in the meantime.